are following the law when their cases have not been fully adjudicated, and ICE is doing something unprecedented. They are arresting and deporting people who are following the law. That has understandably created people who have been put in an impossible situation. Americans do want our immigration laws enforced, but they're also fair. They don't like unfairness. They don't like people being denied due process rights. And that's what's actually going on also here when people show up to their hearings and then thinking they're obeying the law and then seeing their families being arrested and taken away, or showing up to schools and parents separated from their kids. This is going to inflame communities. These are intentional acts of inflammation by this administration. They need to pull back. They need to pull back the National Guard, and they need to rein in ICE's inflammatory tactics.
So are you suggesting that this is a distraction from the big, beautiful bill and the
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, right here.
Now, you mentioned that you want to have the National Guard withdrawn, you don't have the National Guard being involved in this. You also mentioned the insurrection, so to speak, on January 6th. That was back when the National Guard was pulled back and was waiting for a long period of time, and then there was a big investigation that was put into that, and people said, "Where's the National Guard? We're having all these rioters who came into the Capitol. Where is the National Guard?" Then all of a sudden, here we had the National Guard that was put in there because there was, let's face it, a lot of rioters and a lot of violence that was going on there that you're calling peaceful protesters. But a lot of people didn't see that on the TV screens. So either you don't have the National Guard that didn't come in on time on January 6th, or you do have the National Guard where there was violence. We did see it on our TV screens. What do you want?
So, wait a second. So on January 6th, I was here. There was 50,000 people outside. They were scaling the walls. They were bashing in, breaking in, with members of Congress trapped in the gallery, including myself, including a lot of the people here. That was a dire situation where the police were run over. People were beaten with. And the difference is Speaker Pelosi asked for help. Very different situation. And here's the thing. Donald Trump is the one that was actually inciting that. And here's what's also going on. How many police officers have died in LA? 0. How many people died on January 6th? 5. How many people their heads were beaten in here? At least 1 or 2 or maybe more, right? There was so when people say that Democrats are being not consistent is completely wrong. Next question.
Can we get their outlet when they ask a question?
Yeah.
Why address this as a distraction from the big beautiful bill and Musk instead of treating it as a goal unto itself?
Who are you with again?
I'm with Reuters, sir.
Who wants to answer that?
Anybody?
The distraction question.
Instead of
I think there's some difference of opinion here as to what Trump is trying to distract us from. But it's clear that that's what he's doing, and he can create so much inflammation in Los Angeles and then say, oh, well, now there's a riot that I've created. I think what he's trying to distract us from is the most embarrassing big bromance blowout in history, but more importantly, the biggest amount of corruption since the privatization of the Soviet Union. The $400 million plane, the $300 million from Chinese interests into Trump coin, and the $2 billion from Abu Dhabi into his Trump stablecoin. That we shouldn't be having this press conference here. We should be having charts showing you the levels of corruption that we've seen in the Trump administration. But Trump thinks he can win by tearing down the city of Los Angeles.
next question.
With notice. So right now we've seen that the Trump administration is kind of doing this thing of going after Democratic elected officials. So the charges against Congresswoman McIver, the arrest against the New York mayor, and now we have that threat against Governor Newsom. So is there any concerns now that that's going to be kind of become the new normal? And again, if there's any concern that any one of your Democratic colleagues from here in Congress and just anybody in the party, any official, could be next.
Yeah.
Waters take this?
Oh, yeah, they're most likely to go after you next, so you want to. Are you
A couple of things here. I got a lot of calls about the arrest of David Werta, who's one of our organized labor leaders at SEIU. And so this started on Saturday. It was mentioned here several times that they were in South LA. They were in my district. They were in our district. They were in Paramount. They were in Lenox, and they were in Compton, California. And they were roughing up. They were basically raiding. They were doing anything that they could to get the numbers that the president wants to prove what he said he was going to do when he was campaigning. He was going to get millions deported. And so you all know, how many know that Los Angeles is a sanctuary city? First, do you know that? How many of you know and understand that those people who are on the ground, who are seeing what is going on, should be paid attention to? I don't like the idea that the minute the president says there's violence, the press kind of responds to that. I was on the ground. I went on the ground on Sunday. I went to downtown detention center to try and get in. They slammed the door in my face. There were few people outside. They were not protesting, but guess who really had the attention? It was the National Guard, armed with huge, look like AK-47, huge weapons pointed at the people on the sidewalk who were barely protesting at all. And so the first thing you got to get it in your heads is you cannot believe what the president is telling you. You've got to understand that he's a liar, that he cannot be trusted, that he wants to get the numbers. He wants to show MAGA crowd that he's in fact getting the numbers he promised he was going to get to deport people out of the country. Now, if you're not careful in the way that you analyze this and you see this, you're going to not understand when martial law is called. You know what is about to happen? I'll tell you what is about to happen. The National Guard is the first call out. The Marines, the second call out. Doesn't that cause you to wonder, why are we getting all of these armed forces out when the protests and even those who were out of step with what we are advocating, peaceful protest, did not create any violence? Nobody was shot, nobody was killed. Get it in your head. And so when martial law is called, what are you going to say? I missed the point. Don't miss the point, you all. Don't think that somehow, because they called out the National Guard, there was violence. There was no violence. I was on the street. I know. And I went from downtown detention back out into the community, talking to people what happened in Paramount, what happened in Compton, what happened in Inglewood. So, first of all, get it straight. And don't just rely on what you're being told or the few incidents that you saw. He's provoking. He's trying to make sure that he gets people angry. People are worried about separation of families, children from their mothers and their fathers, etc. And of course, we always have to be careful that they're not agent provocateurs that we've learned about historically, that's in the middle of all of this, trying to make sure that they create violence. We are not creating violence. We don't have any outpouring of violence. We are saying we want peaceful protest. The Constitution guarantees that. Stop this lying president from what he's doing and getting into your heads and get it straight.
Thank you. So adding on to it, the arresting of a member of Congress, threatening to arrest an individual is all part of a pattern of a president that is outside the bounds of the law. You know, when it comes to the elected officials, when it comes to attacking the courts, trying to impeach judges, ignoring court orders, sending in the military, nationalizing or federalizing the National Guard, that is the dark path that we are talking about. That is the path we are on, where he will end up in a place where he ends up calling martial law unless the American people see that what's going on in California is an excuse to test the bounds of his authority or break those bounds completely.
Jimmy, just to back up what Maxine's saying. So we received a briefing from the general who commands our National Guard. I asked him in that briefing, is there any coordination between the now federalized National Guard and Los Angeles and state officials? He was at pains to say he didn't see any. Of the 2,000, that's the number you're throwing out there. That's the big dramatic number. 2,000 National Guard nationalized. Do you know how much? Do you know how many that our general reported actually being used? 1,600 are actually staying. They're not being used. They're not been tapped. About 325. 3 different locations, 50 guard at a time at each location, being replaced after 12-hour shifts. 150 people. Then he justifies another 700 Marines? Come on, press corps. Ask your questions.
Right.
Get the reporting straight.
That's right.
You're reporting 2,000 sent to California, 700 Marines. This is ridiculous. This is nothing. This is much ado about nothing that this president's created. It's all a sham. Our people are seeing through it. You've got to help get the truth out there.
That's right, absolutely.
Can I just add 10 seconds really quick? I also want to highlight, as what's been pointed out, the pattern. It's even the attack on the press. We have seen in the coverage of the LA, of what's happening right now in Los Angeles, is a reporter from NBC who had a press vest on, saying he was the press, being roughed up, told he had to leave. Last night we saw a CNN reporter who was luckily on air, who was called over. They started to arrest him and then told him that he had to get out. And we've seen clips of the reporters who are doing live shots, doing nothing, not even protesting, they're reporting and they're being shot with pellets. Okay, and those are the ones that we have documentation of. So these are reporters. These are your colleagues, and they're going after you too. And we know this president has thrown out the press that he doesn't like when they're reporting from the Oval Office. So this is a pattern of going down the road of being a dictator.
And someone should be asking how much all this is costing.
So I want to, I actually have to go to, I'm on the House Intelligence Committee, so I have to go run, but I'm going to let Mike Levine.
Well, add one thing.
Okay.
Hi, Laura Friedman from Los Angeles. I just want to add a little anecdote about the effect of bringing the Marines in and bringing the National Guard in. So I'm a mom. I'm in a mom's group on Facebook. You know, a bunch of non-political moms chatter about all kinds of stuff. Going into the weekend, the chatter turned to the raids. These are mostly American citizen moms, I'm assuming, you know, in suburban Los Angeles, very concerned about the raids, felt it was inhumane, have seen kids pulled out of school. We saw a huge reduction of kids going to school in Los Angeles. So they wanted to help. They were asking, where do we go and protest? In the last day, the talk that I have seen in this group is that they're afraid of their own government. They haven't been saying they're afraid of the guys, of the bozos that we see throwing rocks, you know, who need to go to jail, they need to get arrested, totally unacceptable, they're putting everyone in danger. But they're afraid that they're gonna get shot by the National Guard. They're asking each other, are the Marines gonna have live ammunition? Are they gonna be shooting into the crowd? There's an effect here of chilling Americans' ability to exercise their First Amendment rights and protest. This is a bunch of moms who want to support their undocumented community members who are now scared to go to protests here in America. That's the effect that these policies from this president are having on citizens. That should be a bigger story. And they're asking each other, is it safe to go? I just want to go and stand and hold a sign. Are they going to arrest me? Are they going to shoot at me? That should be something that gives all of us pause in this moment. Thanks.
Just following up on the use of the Marines, I hope you asked the tough questions. What are the rules of engagement and what is the legal authority? I can tell you the legal authority is a gray area at best. The Marines are only able to protect the federal property and federal personnel unless the President invokes the Insurrection Act, which he has not done. I have tried to find the legal authority. The closest we've come is a memo from 1971 used during the Nixon administration. There's no section relevant in the United States Code. The section relied on for use of the National Guard is solely for purposes of the use of the National Guard. So I asked that question. And as far as the rules of engagement, these are Marines who are trained in lethality. This is the most lethal fighting force in the world. They're not trained in the use of non-lethal weapons. They're not trained for civil disobedience. They're not trained for crowd control. Ask the questions. What are the rules of engagement? What is the legal authority? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Some of these members will stay behind and answer some questions. Thank you.
Now.
Thank you.
Can you just talk to us in Spanish just about the possibility of President Trump enacting the insurrectionist law and the consequences?
Okay. Quiero decir que nuestra comunidad en Los Ángeles, en California, en los Estados Unidos, tenemos muchas preocupaciones que este presidente va a hacer algo que no va a cambiar nuestro país para siempre. Y yo creo que si va a usar el Insurrection Act, eso va a hacer mucho daño a nuestra comunidad, pero va a hacer mucho daño a nuestro país, a nuestra democracia, va a hacer mucho daño a nuestro gobierno, porque gente va a creer que en este país ya no es un democracia, es un país que es de una persona, y eso es Donald Trump. Y esa persona ya no está obligado a seguir la ley. So, nosotros tenemos estamos preocupados con esto, pero vamos a luchar cada día que nuestra comunidad, para el país, sabe qué está pasando. Gracias. Thank you.
All right. Good. Sounds good.